Today's episode, we are joined with Anna from MilSpouse Transition. And behind every service member stands a spouse navigating their own battle, one of constant change, relocation, and reinvention. Today, we're going to talk with the team of MilSpouse Transition, an organization built to empower military spouses as they step into that new chapter with purpose, resilience, and community. Anna, how are you? I would love to hear more about your mission and what you're doing with MilSpouse Transition.
Well, hi, Andrew, and thank you so much for having me on today. I am excited to be here and share more about MilSpouse Transition. I should probably just kind of start with who I am. I am a military spouse, and I met my service member during a break in his active duty service time. He did 24 years total, and I met him kind of when he had ETS'd out and then had gone into the guard and then the reserves, anyways, the whole thing. And when we met, I called them his camping weekends, right? I didn't understand what military life was like or what it entailed, really. He got activated in the early 2000s after we had gotten married, and that led us to that active duty military life. We had multiple moves, CONUS, OCONUS. As far as like the big things for military spouses, I had a career. I actually was able to stay with the same company for 16 years, but had no real professional growth. But I loved the travel and the experiences that came with military life. And then transition happened. And for us, this happened about 4 years ago. It was during COVID, and it
Ooh,
was, yeah, just added another
yeah,
layer
just to
of
add that
difficult.
on to it. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But that transition was a lot more difficult than we expected it to be. And that is how MilSpouse Transition came into existence. It was through my lived experience, my spouse's lived experience. And then as I started to speak with other spouses, realizing we all go through this, whether it was COVID or not, there is a huge disconnect, a huge gap between military spouses understanding and knowing how to transition out of active duty military life alongside their spouse.
Okay, so let's dive into this. So there was a defining moment, right? Where you're going through this transition, you're a spouse. Tell me a little bit more about that defining moment when you sat down and said, I think I want to help other spouses going through this process right now. Talk to me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So, the life of a military spouse, when we talk about it, we talk about change all the time. We are very used to change. We're used to last minute plans. We are used to you're moving here. Guess what? Surprise, you're actually not. You're going there. Right. And we're used to kind of like adapting on the fly with whatever military life was throwing at us. With transition, I kind of adopted that same attitude of it's not going to be that big of a deal. It's going to be like any other PCS move. We're just, it's just a little bit different in the sense of we're not moving to a new location for the military. We're doing this now for ourselves. And that was kind of the attitude I took. And so I conducted it like every other PCS move we had ever had. I helped my spouse get all ready to go. We got all the CIF gear all taken care of. We got all of his paperwork and that massive checklist he was given for retirement. We went through that whole long thing together. We talked all about all the stuff he had to get done. And then because it was COVID, there's no retirement ceremony, no accolades, nothing like that. It really literally was his last day. He got in the car, had a mask on, which, I like to tell the story that he had a full beard under there that he was
Yeah.
hiding,
Yeah.
but nobody was going to see it because he had a mask on. And he went into headquarters and he picked up his packet and he picked up my packet and then he came home.
Hmm.
And that morning, as I watched him getting into the car, standing at just my office window, and I watched him get into the car and drive away, and I panicked. And the question that came into my mind was, I don't know if I can still use the on post library. I call this my library card moment. So it seems like a
Okay.
silly,
So this
mundane
was this
question.
was the moment here.
This is the
Okay.
moment. Yes.
All right.
Feels like, and now even talking about it, I laugh about it because I think there's 5 libraries in my community that I could use. What's the big deal? But what that moment said to me is, you didn't prepare yourself. You got him prepared, but you forgot about the fact that you've lived this same life alongside him for the same 24 years.
Yeah. And that's a long time.
Yeah, it's a
24
very
years.
long time.
Yeah.
And you forgot about yourself in this
Hmm.
process.
Hmm.
And I had a little bit of a meltdown of, wait, I'm not ready. I tried to call him and be like, wait, don't pick it up yet. Like we had another day or something we could do, which of
Yeah.
course is not an option at that point. But what I realized right then is that I hadn't taken time to make sure that I was ready to leave active duty military life as much as he was ready to leave it. And the more I talk to spouses, I realize most spouses feel this way, where there is this expectation of, we're just going to go with the flow and it's going to be like every other PCS move until we're in the moment. And then we realize, no, we're actually losing a lot more than what we might normally consider we're going to be losing with just a standard PCS move. And that was when MilSpouse Transition just started to formulate and percolate. And 18 months ago, I launched the website, and we have been going strong now for 18 months and seeing what we can do with it.
Yeah. So in those last 18 months, in what ways has MilSpouse Transition, helped support the spouses that are going through the same transition hardships that maybe you went through?
Yeah. So initially, I'm a Gallup certified strengths coach. So I work a lot with like identity and self-awareness and strengths in that sense, just on a professional level. And so I kind of pulled from that when I started thinking about spouse transition, because I thought, what would have truly helped me? And there's two parts to this. The first part is that checklist my spouse got, wouldn't it have been great if I had one too? Right? This
Yeah.
tactical, I call it the tactical to-do list, right? It's here's the things you can't forget about doing. Everything from getting your medical records to, looking into the housing stuff and all of those things that we have to take care of. But the other side to that I realized is really kind of missing across the board for transition was that more emotional and mental preparation of a massive lifestyle change. And so, with those two things in mind, we launched a website that has become a resource hub, but we've centered that resource hub around 5 areas of well being. So, it's financial, career, physical, social, and community. And everything in that hub, and strengths, strengths is in there as well. But everything in that hub reflects back on transition, but ties to one of those areas of well being, in the sense of, you cannot transition well if you are not looking at this in a more holistic sense across these areas of well being. If you're only focused on getting a job and leaving everything else behind, you're going to feel very much like I felt that day I watched him walk out the door and panicked because of a library card.
So on your website, you have these, like, let's say, pillars or core kind of missions that you're working on. Within the website, are people able to go there and kind of click there and find information and help themselves with anything that's on there, and maybe get some insight and how they can help themselves through this transition?
So we have everything from some of those tactical to-do lists and downloads available across the board for all of those areas of well-being and strengths. And we talk a lot about purpose and identity and finding community and keeping your relationship strong during transition, because there's so much stress that happens during that time frame. Making sure you take care of yourself, all of that is found on the website. We also initially piloted 2 workshop programs that are full day workshops where we lead spouses going through transition through a strengths assessment and then into these 5 areas of well-being. And we did two.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
Like a weekend long thing or a one
they
day
were
or
we did them as 1 day workshops. We tried one virtually in 1 day. That was a lot. That's a long time to be online. But it is considered a 1 day workshop. And from that, it was really a good pilot in the sense of that we got good feedback from spouses. We heard from a lot of them, I wish that my service member could take this with me and we could do this together, because what we focused on was that process of planning that next phase of your life from a place of understanding truly what you're losing and what you will not have moving forward.
This is kind of a random question, but do you think that people with 24 years on, right, and people that only served for 4 or 5 years, do you think that transition's any different, or is it still hard for everybody?
The short answer is it's still hard for everybody. But the bigger answer there is there are going to be different considerations for somebody that's been in for 24 years versus somebody that's done 4 or 5 years. Just taking myself as an example, I did not realize how institutionalized I had become with certain things. Healthcare, for example. I truly had lost touch with what the outside world of healthcare looked like and how to navigate it. I had to be retaught that when we exited military life. It's not like what happens at the medical facilities on post. Just little things like that where I had to remind myself, you can find these same resources in your community, but it was also knowing where to look for those. And somebody who's been in less time is still has adapted to that military life, but I think will have less struggles in being able to remind themselves, this is how we did it before. We're going to go back to some of that now. But I don't think that it takes away from the emotional and mental investment that military spouses specifically put into creating a life that works around the military demands.
Yeah, right. And that's kind of the thing I wanted to talk about. And thank you for that insight, because I don't think it matters if you've been in a short time or a long time. That transition is still hard. And there's still aspects of it that people are going to struggle with in different ways. Right.
Absolutely.
And I think that's with what you're doing with MilSpouse Transition. I mean, it's incredible, right? You're helping spouses navigate through this. And I love the idea of bringing in that service member too, and helping them through that. So what are some like flagship programs or big things you got going on right now with MilSpouse Transitions?
Well, as I mentioned, we are only 18 months old, so we are fairly new when it comes to the world of, building something out. But we do have a couple of things. The workshop I discussed, that pilot program, MilSpouse Strong, after we piloted it, we kind of went back to the drawing board with a couple of things. We've revised it. And 2026, we're rolling that out, which I'm really excited, like on a bigger level. The other things that we are working hard this next year to really build out our community collaborations. So I am not an expert in everything, nor do I want to be, right? And there's a lot of organizations that support military families and veteran families that are already doing things really well that I would love to be able to tap into and use as a resource for transitioning spouses, as opposed to trying to recreate something that's already there. The podcast that we have a podcast in the resource hub on the website. Of course, I'm going to continue to build information there and add to it. We also have an area on our website that we want to build out over the next year or so that's what we might call non-traditional transitions. So we're talking about divorcing military spouses, divorcing Gold Star spouses is another one that we're looking at. And then our Guard and Reserve spouses who still have some pieces of that active duty life, but it's such a different process for them when they transition out, and kind of helping them navigate that. Those are 3 areas we want to grow and build. Oh, and the 4th one, medical boards, which are also yet another kind of unique transition that just doesn't have a lot of information available on it.
So you really don't have a primary audience. You're kind of just looking to help any spouse transitioning into civilian life or out of service in any way that you possibly can, right? And as you grow and as you get bigger, it sounds like you're just going to come up with some really good initiatives, and you already have some going. Where is the workshop located? Where are you based out of?
So I am based out of Texas. We retired out of Fort Hood, and like all or many a military family story, we had the where do you want to live? I don't know. Where do you want to live? I don't know. Now it's too late. We're staying here for a while. And so
we get that a lot.
Yeah. So we currently reside in Texas. We call it our 10-year plan and our forever for now home, is what we've called that. And the workshop itself, we've done both in person and we did it here at Fort Hood. And then we have also done it virtually. And we had, about 50 military spouses join us from all around the United States and during that workshop. So the goal for next year then would be to offer that again virtually and in person at various bases around the United States.
Yeah, and that's incredible. And I think that's the point of all this, right? Is to get your word out there, get your mission out on our platforms, and just kind of really amplify that and show people, what you're doing and being able to showcase everything that you're doing within MilSpouse Transition. So let's switch gears a little bit. Could you tell me a success story? Tell me something that really just comes to mind in the last 18 months when you've been working with veteran spouses that just is one of those stories you just got to tell.
So this is really a hard one, Andrew, because we have the workshop that we piloted and we got some great feedback from that. But as far as like taking an individual spouse from start to finish, I don't really have a success story like that. What I do have though are messages and conversations of spouses that reach out to me about something that inspired them or help them better understand a process or help them better feel more seen or more heard through their transition. I can't tell you how many hundreds of those I receive weekly, as they navigate through our website or as they're looking for something specific. Military spouses we are known for doing it all by ourselves, right? We put a plan in place, we execute it. We might have to reach out to a couple of military friends here and there. And I think so many spouses approach transition this way because the conversation right now does not lean into spouses transition too.
No,
You
you
just
don't.
don't hear
You
that
don't.
very often. What you hear is it's a job change for your service member. And that's really where the focus lies right now in the transition programs that are available currently. And so a huge part of this has just been changing that narrative. And that's where we're seeing our success stories is spouses coming in and saying, thank you so much for saying what I've been feeling, but didn't know how to put into words. Thank you so much for creating this thing that has just relieved the stress for me because now I know what I'm supposed to be doing in this moment. And even like acknowledging the stressors and challenges that do come with transition, the fact that you're going to maybe have more fights than you ever thought you would have with your service member, right? Like the stress is for real and it aggravates and you feel like you're going to rip your relationship apart. Having those conversations and the reality. And for long-term spouses, that the idea that a lot of times transition is happening at the same time women are hitting, and 92% of spouses are women at this point, but at the same time that women are hitting menopause. And so you've got two massive life changes
And your
happening
mind's
all
just
at
like,
the
what
same
is going
time.
on, right?
Yeah, and these are things that you do not hear being discussed in the military community when it comes to transition, and that's what we're trying to do is break down some of those barriers of I guess not even fear or shame. That's not really what it is. It's just the idea of I don't deserve to have a voice in this space or it's not my place to say something, and I disagree with that. I think military spouses should have a voice, especially if they have walked alongside their service member.
The first time I talked to you, Anna, it was like these people are doing amazing things, right? They are helping spouses in the right way, and the whole mission just resonated with me, and I love that. So, if you were to give some advice to a military spouse just starting the transition, right? Service member says, I'm done. I'm not going to reenlist. I'm done. So they're sitting down trying to figure out this whole transition process. What's some advice you would give them? You've already talked a little bit about some of that already, but maybe a couple things, just first things they need to kind of focus on.
A couple of things. First of all, hopefully you are already having conversations, and I don't care where you're at in your military journey. Hopefully you're having conversations with your service member right now about what their plan is. Do they want to stay in a 20-year career, or are we planning on getting out in 8? Because that is really going to help you prepare properly for that transition process. And so the very first thing would be start as early as you can. Don't wait for that surprise announcement. That's what happened in our case. It literally was home from the office after during COVID, and he said, I think I'm done. I don't want to put my boots on anymore. And I was like, whoa, hold up. We said one more duty station at least. This is not the plan. And we had to go through this whole restructuring. And um, because of COVID and some other factors, we got 9 months and he was out. That was way faster than I was expecting it to go. But that was the process that occurred for us. And I know a lot of families have that. So start early, start as early as you possibly can. The second thing is ask all the questions. Do not assume you and your spouse are on the same page about anything. And one of the things that we do have on our site is like this transition journey kind of, it's like the timeline that you kind of see. And the first 5 pages cover those areas of well-being and strengths, purpose, and identity. And it is question after question of, do you know the answers to these things? And it's not just things like where you want to live. It dives just a little bit deeper. It dives into your financial situation. It dives into your relationship stuff and how you're caring for those relationships. It talks about what do you truly find important in community and what kind of resources does your family truly need? And so many times the spouses will just think, well, they know what we do, right? But when we are leading the household and the service members at work, there is a massive disconnect there, and we might not be on the same page. So that's the other one, is ask all the questions. And then last but not least, it would just be a reminder that your experience counts in this conversation. And don't let anybody tell you it doesn't. And you deserve to have a say in what's going to happen next and how it happens a little bit. So, one of the things I hear military spouses say a lot is, well, my service member didn't want a retirement ceremony. I wish we had done it though. It would have been nice to have this, that, or the other. And so it's like, well, you can always have a party celebrating your own experience, right? We don't have to. We've tied our military life so heavily to the service member's job, their experience, their time served, that I like to remind them that it's okay to separate yourself a little bit from that and say, I also accomplished something amazing as a military spouse. And it's okay to celebrate that. Even if my service member doesn't want to celebrate their time in service, I want to celebrate my time alongside them in service.
Just from talking to you today, Anna, I could tell you have the passion, right? You've started MilSpouse Transition for a reason, and your reason is it's going to resonate with a lot of people. And I really appreciate you sharing that journey and sharing some of these insights to our viewers and to any spouse out there. Thank you so much for all of your insight into that. That's amazing. How can people get a hold of you? We mentioned your website. Do you have any other with the podcast? Is there anything else that they can get a hold of you by?
Yeah, our website's going to be the best way. There's a contact form in there, and if you send it, it's going to get to me. But I am very active on LinkedIn. If you're a LinkedIn user, you can look up my name, and I will be on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect in that way as well, as especially for organizations or partners that want to look at collaborating on something. Or speaking opportunities or workshops, any of that kind of stuff. I really do a lot of that on LinkedIn. And then, of course, our podcast, we would love to have feedback on what you think about the topics or what topics you think are important. Speaking to the audience out there, what topics they think are important about transition and spouses. Because really, like I mentioned before, the goal here is not to create something for myself. It's to create something that's truly going to be helpful for spouses coming through that process after me. I mean, I've done it. I transitioned. It wasn't stellar, but we did it. We did it. We're on the other side.
And that's your mission, right? You want to help everybody else coming out of that and going through this transition. I love that. So in the description of the video, you'll see all the links to everything, MilSpouse Transition, and you'll be able to click on that and go and visit their website, listen to their podcast, get in touch with them any way you can. Once again, I really appreciate you sharing your mission with us. It's been a great talk with you, Anna. And again, I really appreciate everything you're doing for our veterans and for our veteran spouses. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Stay mission ready.